Okay, hello everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our November edition of the Agri-Comfort webinar. We're talking today about a calf topic again, since last time we were talking about a cow topic, and we're trying to alternate those topics. And yeah, today here with me is Anna. I'm going to introduce her in a second, and we're going to talk about the great product of MilkBar. So yeah, just to introduce myself very briefly to you, I'm Nele. I'm the vet of Agri-Comfort. I'm based in Germany, hosting this webinar for anybody that's new here. Hello, nice to have you on board. So here today with me is Anna McIntyre. Is that actually right?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Always struggling with that a little bit. From the UK. Anna, nice to have you.
Hello.
So, and I wrote here that you're the international sales manager of MilkBar, but you're actually quite a bit more like that. What is your association with this company? Can you tell us a bit about your background?
Hi everyone, I'm Anna from MilkBar, and as Nele said, I'm the global sales marketing manager. MilkBar is actually our family business, and it was developed in the late 80s by my parents on our family farm, which was in the very north of New Zealand. And my parents were really looking for some solutions on how to make the whole calf rearing process easier, because in New Zealand we raise the calves seasonally, and so all the calves come in like a 4 to 6 week period of time, and it puts a huge stress on the farms. So MilkBar is now a global brand, but we're still a family company, and my parents are heavily involved. I'm obviously heavily involved. My brother and my sister, my brother-in-law, we are a real family affair. And we also have a just wonderful team of people around the world that we work alongside. So we're very lucky with our passion for the calves, and through that we've got great people that also work with us.
Great. That's so cool. Yeah, and I think you and we first met, I think in Zwolle, about 2.5 years ago. Yeah, and on and off on different trade shows and seminars and so on. Yeah, so I'm very excited to have you here. Thanks for joining me.
It's my pleasure.
So, okay, so just to, for listeners, just to give you a little bit of the technicality backgrounds. So Anna and I are just going to talk a little bit about the background of calf feeding. That part I'm going to do a little bit of like the animal health side of things, and you're going to help us understand what kind of solution MilkBar brings to that topic. And if anybody has any questions, I highly want to encourage you to use the Q&A function of this webinar. If you go with your cursor all the way to the top or to the bottom of the screen, you find a bar, and there's a button for the Q&A. Just type your question in there, and we have a special time dedicated at the end of the webinar where we're going to answer those questions. So feel free at any point to type those in, and we're going to come to them later. Okay. Well, at the beginning, I want to get to know our listeners a little bit better. I want to ask you a question, and I want to ask you what the main style of calf feeding is that has been used in your region. Or if you're a farmer yourself, what are you using yourself? If you're a salesperson, what are your customers mainly using? And just feel free to answer this. And it's set to anonymous, so nobody's going to see who's answering. We're just wanting to see what's kind of the system that you guys are using. And yeah, so I can say that, like this picture, for example, this was taken in Italy by our Italian dealer, and but I see a lot of, for example, plain bucket feeding in Italy, versus here in Germany and maybe the Netherlands, where I'm which is mainly the places where I'm traveling around, most of the farms are using like either automatic feeders or Teat buckets, I would say. Okay, I think I just close this and show you the results. So there was no real, we just wanted to see where we're at here. Oh, and Nobody's using a slow feeding system for now. I hope we can. Not yet, exactly. I hope we can change that after this, or at least get some gears moving, maybe start thinking about that kind of solution. It's very unfortunate to see that most of the people answered buckets. I think that's kind of sad. You told me before that you actually have kind of a strong opinion on that yourself.
I do.
Well, let's talk about why we don't like that so much. Let me just scoot us right over here, maybe. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the physiology of nursing, of calves drinking milk. Where are we coming from? What made nature calves do? So in this picture here, we see a calf drinking from a cow, and this is really the natural position a calf takes when it drinks from a cow. A calf grows, a cow doesn't anymore, so the udder always stays in kind of the same position. And as the calf gets older, this hyperextension of the neck gets more and more severe, but that is very normal for the calf to have its neck bent like this. And it's actually also very logical if you think about it, because the calf has already 4 stomaches. They're not fully developed yet. The rumen and everything needs to grow over time. But a calf wants to drink its milk into its abomasum, the 4th stomach, and its water into the 1st stomach, the rumen. And to kind of like show the body the difference, there is a groove, the esophageal groove, that lets the milk bypass the rumen into the abomasum. To let that's muscle, and so that can contract, the body needs a couple of signs. And one sign is the sugar in the milk that the calf tastes on its tongue that makes it contract automatically. But another sign actually is this hyperextension of the neck and this position that really much helps with this reflex being released and the groove working the way it is. So a calf that is drinking from a bucket, that is where it kind of needs to stick its head in, that is the position for a calf to drink milk. To drink water, like from a lake or a puddle in nature. And this like kind of upper position to drink from an udder, that is the physiological position to drink milk. And the body reacts with it with a closed groove that bypasses the milk into the abomasum. So this position is actually, it's natural and it's kind of important. And then the next thing is a calf doesn't just put pressure on a cow's teat, as our milking machines do not just like squeeze the teat and the milk squirts out. We all know that a milking machine applies a vacuum, like it squeezes the teat and it also like pulls the milk out. And that's exactly what the calf does too. It takes the teat in its mouth, squeezes it, and also pulls on it with the under pressure that it creates in its mouth. That is, if you describe that physically, that's positive and negative pressure, squeezing and suckling. And that's what, that's just the full process of nursing. And most of the teats on standard teat buckets that have a valve, they don't need that. They only need the calf to press on the teat to only apply positive pressure. And that seems like a small difference at first, but it actually makes a whole lot of a difference, because then the suckling, releases a lot of saliva in the mouth when the calf does that. And it also creates a neurological feedback to the brain that satisfies the instinct of suckling. You can kind of think a little bit about a baby that has a pacifier. They also like to suckle and create this under pressure in their mouth to be pacified and be happy, because the neurological feedback helps the brain to calm down and be satisfied. But also the saliva, as mentioned before, that is very, very crucial. And over the amount of time, the calf builds up quite a large amount that it all swallows down with the milk. And that is very important. As you can see here, the calf has even little bubbles building up from the saliva that it produces. because the saliva has a lot of peptides in it, a lot of them have like a natural antibiotic function. And that's kind of the first line of defense that the calf has against bacteria and other pathogens that might be in the milk. The peptides in the saliva already fight that off. And the other thing is, or the second thing is that the saliva is very alkaline. So when the calf swallows it together with the milk, it buffers the pH in the apomasum that is like a human stomach, rather acidy. So when it swallows the milk and the saliva together, this acidity of the stomach fluid is buffered into a more alkaline pH, which helps the enzymes in the apomasum work better. The enzymes in the apomasum are there for the curding. As you may know from cheese making, rennin was originally extracted from calves' stomachs to make milk curd for cheese making. That is the same process as happens in the calf's stomach, and it happens better with more saliva. And saliva also contains enzymes itself that help with the digestion process, so that it helps break down the fat and proteins in the milk, and are just one more step of the digestive tract that would not be there if the calf would not swallow the saliva. And so that is all of that in mind. It has quite a few functions. So the faster the calf drinks and the less sucking it actually needs to do, also the less saliva it swallows, and all of its positive qualities are getting lost. I already talked a little bit about the curding. So here you see two different pictures from the inside of an apomasum. Sorry, this is very normal for a veterinarian. I hope this is not too hard on anybody's stomach right now. And these are like from necropsies of two different calves. This calf was fed with a fast-flowing teat, and this calf was fed with a slow-flowing teat. And so this calf also drank a lot faster, and this calf took a lot longer time to finish its meal. And with that, swallowed a lot more saliva. And you can see that here, almost all of the milk is curded. It really much looks like a step in the cheese making process. Everything is curded and like very homogeneous. And here you can see there's like a big puddle of fluids with just a couple curds floating in it. And this really is important, because this is a physiological status that it should be like. This is kind of the equivalent of a calf that would have been drinking from a cow. And this was just a status where they also measured how much lactose, so the sugar, the milk sugar, was in this content of the stomach and the rest of the digestive tract, and also in this calf. And what they found is that this calf had basically absorbed all of the lactose. It was not in the stomach anymore, but this calf did not, and the level of the lactose in the stomach was really, really high. And interesting enough, the calves that had the high levels of lactose also had a lot higher levels of diarrhea prevalence. And the theory here is that this lactose is also really good food for bacteria like E. coli, for example. And this calf just didn't feed its bacteria. This calf did. So all in all together, we want the energy, and lactose is sugar, that is pure energy. We want that energy not to go to the bacteria and make the calf sick. We want it to go into the calf and help it grow. So this is really an important step. All of that achieved by just calf slobber, basically, that they swallow. You think it's a small thing, but it really has a whole sequence of events that kind of follow afterwards, as it usually is in the physiology of things. And when you fix one little thing at the very beginning, everything else kind of falls in place afterwards. And that's the same thing here. When we help the calf produce and swallow a lot of saliva, his whole digestive tract works a lot better than if it didn't. Yeah, so to summarize this, I just threw a lot of things at you, But what we really need in feeding a calf, or what we need to achieve in feeding a calf, is we need to offer them their meal at the correct position. So what you see here, a feeder with a teat, and the calf has to like overextend its neck like this. That's what we need. And then we also need to achieve that they drink slow, and that they need to apply positive and negative pressure so that the esophageal groove closes and they produce a lot of saliva. Well, and Anna, I would like you to talk a little bit about what MilkBar brings or came up with to solve this problem.
Okay. That was so, even though I know all this, I was like, oh yes, this is so interesting. So the MilkBar Teat is back in the 1980s when my parents were dairy farming. At that time, farming in New Zealand, it was really tough, and my mother, who's a nurse, she went back to nursing. And so my father, he was left on the farm to raise the calves and to run the whole farm. And for years, my mother had been saying that the way the calves are fed is just not right. It doesn't make any sense to her as a nurse to feed the calves quickly, to feed them from a tube. All of these things, they just went against nature. And my father had always said, well, you know, this is just the way it is. This is how calves are raised. This is farming. So she went back to nurse, and he was doing the calves, and he realized that she was absolutely right, that the way the calves were being fed was taking much longer, because not only did he have to feed them, prepare the milk and do all of that, he was also spending a significant amount of time managing the health of the calves. And you know, on a farm, you'll often have a house cow, and you will end up hand milking that cow or bits and pieces. You might have some calves, like some beef calves, that will stay on the cows. And so my father soon realized that the calves that were fed on cows never got diarrhea, they didn't cross suckle, their coats were beautiful, they never got sick, and they were all in all much heavier and much happier looking calves. So this is all pre-Google, he was trying to find out if there was any information available at universities and places like that that dealt with the actual physiology of the calf and dealt with how the calf actually drinks the milk and processes the milk. So there's loads of information and research on milk temperature, on the protein, etc., etc., but there wasn't really anything on the physiology. So he just started experimenting and playing with ways to slow the teats down. And through 3 or so years of just lots of experimenting, he discovered a way to make the teat feed as slowly as possible for the calf to have all the health benefits, but not too slowly to be impractical for the farmer. Yeah. So there needed to be a balance between, you know, physiology and practicality. So he inverted the teat, and that basically prevents the teat from leaking. And then the web in the teat gives the calf the same thing as that they would have on a cow, because as you were saying before, it's really important that the calf not only squeezes the teat but also sucks the teat as well. So he needed a way to give the calf the positive and negative pressure. So the inversion and the slit does that. With gravity feed, because we only use gravity feed, it's just much easier to clean. He also really quickly learnt that the quality and the material of the rubber was really vital to bring that all together and make it work. So you can buy a teat that's got an inverted end and a web in it, but the rubber is the little key ingredient that really allows the calf to suckle and nurse at the right speed but that the teat then also lasts for the weaning period as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like your secret ingredient, and like not, or like your secret recipe.
That's right. We like Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Or like Coca-Cola. So cool. Yeah, and I mean, this just works. Like when you first showed me this, I was really impressed with all the studies that have been conducted. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Maybe give us a rundown. Who did what there?
Yeah, so the thing is, whenever we go into new markets, because we know this, we've grown up with this, and because we have our own trial calves ourselves, so we're always trialing and researching and playing around with different things just to get the optimum experience for the calf. So, but when we go into new markets, no one really believes us, because the thing is with the traditional methods, and it was interesting to see that bucket feeding was quite high on that. It's so normal for farmers to see diarrhea, cross-sucking. It's so normal for them to feed their calves for, you know, sometimes 12, 14, 15 weeks sometimes to be able to get them to the weaning weight. And then we come in and we say, you know, if we can just control the flow of milk, all these things will disappear. And they all think we're a bit crazy, to be honest. Yeah. So what we do is
it almost sounds too good to be true. Like
it is. It's like crazy.
Right? Yeah.
So we go in and we find research facilities or you know, really well-known farms or whatever, and we conduct, not us directly, but we will have partners within the markets who will conduct their own research. And then that way it's you know, it's got nothing to do with us, but then the farmers in that region can see, actually, yes, this does work. And one of the most obvious ones is weight. When you were speaking about lactose before, that's such a direct connection. You know, we spend a lot of time and effort researching the best milk powder and all of these different things, and yet if you feed it to the calf in a way that the calf can't utilize all of that nutrition, then it's, you know, you might as well feed them anything. So what we find with the MilkBar Teat, because the flow is so controlled, the positive and negative pressure is what they are designed to drink with. And so because of that, their digestive system can really utilize all of the nutrients. The lactose is absorbed immediately from the abomasum into the bloodstream, and so they get that sugar hit straight away, and the evidence is there in the weight gains. So from a fast flow teat, we will see normally a sort of 10 to 12% weight variance. From bucket feeding, we've seen a weight variance of up to 25%. It's quite significant. And really for the farmer, like for the calf, it's all great anyway, but for the farmer, it means that you can wean earlier. So if you're weaning to weight, it means you can reduce your feeding period by a couple of weeks. And that's all management reduction, which helps the overall flow of the farm.
Yeah. And I mean, that is like the high maintenance period when you have the calves drinking milk, and you need to handle that. Like, I mean, everybody who's ever done it knows it's like at least 2 times a day. I know some people just do once a day, but in the beginning, and really it's like 2 times a day, and then you need to clean the feeders and you need to prepare the milk and have it already. And it's just a lot of work. And I always love the story that you told me that about like New Zealand farms, and who, like, with the bulk calving, that it's usually just like one farmer doing like a couple hundred cows, and then calving season comes and he gets like a German backpacker to help him out. And so it's like you also need it not just to invent a system that works great for the farms, but like really easy to use.
Exactly, really easy to use. And you need the calves to be, they need to be robust, because especially in the European Northern Hemisphere, where the climate is more extreme, you know, in New Zealand, for the most part, we have a really temperate climate. But when you've got extremes, the calves are under a lot of environmental stress as well. And then if you're feeding them in a way that doesn't work for them or their digestive system, then they're a lot more vulnerable to those stresses. And I remember being on a farm once in the Czech Republic, and the farmer was a beautiful farm, amazing calves, and he was very proud of them, and he didn't see any reason to change his feeding system because the calves looked great. And I was like, well, they do, they look magnificent, but what is your management of these calves? And they had a full-time vet keeping them all going, very specialized workers, and he oversaw it. And then one summer he went away on holiday and he came back and all the wheels had fallen off, all his calves were sick. And that's, I guess, where you can, when you can start with gut health, you're just building a much more robust calf, so that if the management changes or it suddenly becomes -40 or +40, the calf is just in a lot better position to be able to deal with that.
They're just like overall healthier.
Yeah, and it's like with us, you know, if we eat well, our systems are more able to withstand the rigors of life. Whereas when we go through phases of eating badly or not looking after ourselves, it impacts us as well.
And I mean, there's even like more talk about that, and I think those were like really interesting, like research topics to look in further would be something like, how do you train the gut of a cow? Like there's all this talk about this microbiome and stuff like that, and I can only imagine that having like a very constant kind of microbiome in the gut, because there's not like diarrhea every other, like 3 times in the weaning period, that has like a positive impact on the overall health of the animal.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of research now that's coming out, which shows that calves that have had diarrhea, pre-weaning diarrhea, it directly impacts their first lactation milk production. So all of these things, you know, as you said, it might sound like a small thing to allow them to drink at the right speed and to produce the saliva, but actually when you're producing a production animal, it does have long-term consequences.
You know what it reminds me really of? This kind of a sidetrack here, but it really reminds me of the air topics. Like when we were talking about like a calf outside, like naturally breathes this and this much air, and this is what we see in calves that are like outside and they don't have pneumonia, or they have like this low levels of ammonia, and then a calf that drinks from a cow has like this low levels of diarrhea, and a calf that is like in an artificial environment.
Absolutely. And
kind of the same.
Also stress, we're talking about nutritional diarrhea as well, not a viral or bacterial.
Same environmental pneumonia and infectious elementary infectious diarrhea. I would say same. Cool. I mean, I want to talk to you about one other, I always don't know where to put us to this. I wanted to talk to you about one other topic here. Something that's been brought up in conversation that I had a lot lately is the topic of cross-suckling. And just to give it, so cross-suckling is defined as a stereotypic behavior. So it's non-natural behavior that animals in captivity show, and kind of like a pacing tiger in a cage. So compare, it's the same class of behavior. So it's a behavior that calves show because they still have the suckling instinct. And that is the main reason, or one of the main reasons, why a lot of farmers want to separate their calves and keep them individual, also to break infectious chains, but also to keep them from suckling on each other. And and you maybe tell us yourself, what is the impact of MilkBar teats on?
So it's really interesting with cross-suckling. So if you take a calf and you allow her to drink at the natural speed, which she's able to then process the milk properly, so between 3 and 4 minutes per litre. So say you're feeding 3 litres, so it should take her 12 to 14 minutes to drink that. And in that time, she produces loads of saliva. As the milk and the saliva is coming into the abomasum, it's curding, and everything's happening as nature has designed it to happen. Then when you take it, that same calf, and if you feed her those 3 litres at, say, 2 minutes per litre, so she'll drink 3 litres in 6 minutes, she'll spend the next 6 minutes cross-sucking on either, if she's with a buddy, it will be on udders, navels, ears. If she's individually housed, it will be on anything she can find, really. And it's quite, it's a very unsettling behaviour. People think it's normal because they see it all the time, but actually it's the first sign your calf is saying, ding, ding, I'm feeding way too fast. And the time they spend cross-sucking is actually the amount of time that they should have taken drinking. So normally they might cross-suck for an extra 6 minutes, and then after that they stop. So it's quite an interesting calf tell. The other thing that we also know is that when you start to see calves cross-suckle, you'll normally start to see some nutritional diarrhea, maybe 2 or 3 days after. So the calf is saying, sorry, I'm drinking too fast. And then a couple of days later, you'll start to see some diarrhea.
What's really interesting, so I read a lot of books in vet school and even now about calves and how to raise them correctly. And there are like a lot of ideas out there how to fix this. There's like, you should add like glucose into the milk. So because the calf, you need to understand the signal for the calf is the high level of glucose in the bloodstream that signals the brain of the calf, okay, we're good. We don't need to suckle anymore because blood sugar is up. We obviously eaten enough. Cool. It takes the calf about 20 minutes from starting of feeding till the moment where there's enough lactose split into glucose that was absorbed into the bloodstream to reach that point where it tells the brain this is good. So if the closer we get, 15 to 20 minutes, the closer we get with our feeding time to that time, the better, because then the feeding time is the exact same time that the body needs to reach that point. And so if you add glucose directly, we skip the part of the splitting of the lactose and we can shorten the feeding time again. Like, yeah, that was in a book. Or we just feed them a little longer. Like, it was basically right there, but somehow the author did not come to the conclusion, or they did not know how to do it.
That's the key. Is not knowing how to do it. And also because it's become quite traditional to feed a calf from a bucket where they produce 0 saliva, and cross-suckling with buckets is quite catastrophic. So, but if that's the way that you are used to feeding calves and used to seeing calves being fed, then it doesn't, it's hard to make your brain shift then to thinking, okay, let's control the flow, because you can't control the flow with a bucket.
I need to plug in my yes, exactly. And then the other thing is what I wrote down here is the part about the negative pressure. It really just works like a pacifier. So this the under pressure in the mouth gives back the neurological feedback again, kind of like a nature switch to that instinct of nursing, suckling, whatever you can get. And with keeping the calves separate, you really just kind of slap the band-aid on the problem. You fix the symptom by keeping the calf from doing that, or by putting them in a head gate or something like that. If we just prolong the feeding time and get closer to a physiological drinking process, we're on the way to fixing the root of the problem. And
that's exactly it. And then in your mind, you sort of might think, well, if we're going to I don't have time to feed the calves slowly. But actually, all of these things that we do on farm to stop the calves cross-suckling takes you more time than it would take you if you just fed them at the speed that they need to be fed.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I would like to show some examples of farms from all over the world. We were just saying that people don't really know how to do this and how this might look like. So I would like to do a little trip around the world, so to say. Yeah, let's start with this. This is your home. This is
That's New Zealand.
yeah.
So those are our mobile calf feeders. And we have, so those are two 50 teat models, and here the farmer wants to have a mob of about 70 calves. So she's got two feeders that she tows one behind the other, and that will be one person can rear sort of 70 calves very, very easily. So the only way to be able to get that many calves drinking easily and happily is by making sure they're feeding at the right speed. If you're feeding them from teats that feed quite quickly, what happens is they will jump from teat to teat to teat. And if you've only got a couple of calves, that's not really a problem, you can manage it. But if you've got 70 calves, that is definitely not something you can manage. So they have to drink at the right speed, and you can see them there. They all just come onto the feeder and they latch on and they stay there. So in New Zealand, where we have a temperate climate, the calves will go, they'll start off in the calf shed. They're actually raised in groups from day one because it's just not practical to have investment. Normally the calf sheds are either a hay barn or some sort of lean-to shed that's used for housing equipment at the rest of the year. But during the calving period, it's transformed into a calf house. And they're in there normally for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they'll go out into the paddocks on the mobile feeders. So you cannot have calves cross-suckling when you're feeding that many. It would be a disaster for your first lactation heifers.
For that poor German backpacker that has to take care of
it. Exactly. So so in New Zealand, Australia, Ireland, some parts of the States as well, actually, it's super common. In the springtime, you drive around the countryside and you see mobile calf feeders in every paddock feeding groups of calves like that.
Yeah, super cool. And let's go to this. So this is actually one of my customers in southern Germany, and he has this lovely calf village with those hutches where he houses 5 fleck feed calves at a time. So he has 100 calves there. Facility, and maybe it's a little hard to see here. There are the feeders here, and he has this group feeders, and it just works really, really well. He's very satisfied with this, and the Fleckvieh breed, as the Montbéliard, are kind of known to be cross-suckling like crazy. He's just said that there's no problem with that at all. So he has his calf, I think he has them separate for 14 days in the beginning, and then in a calf barn upstairs, and then they go into this till weaning. And it's just lovely and perfect. And they don't have, many people ask like why he didn't build like a roof over here. Just very happy with that. And calves are thriving. Yeah, let's just go on. So this is another system where they used bottles, and you just this is one of your newer products, right? You mentioned earlier that it's very important that the teat is always in the right orientation, so the slit is like vertical when the calf is starting to drink. Otherwise, they're not able to suck the milk out of it. So that was kind of tricky because obviously you don't want to like put the bottle in and always like try to check if you put it in the right direction. So you came up with a pretty nifty system there with that the bottle is always in the right orientation. Super cool.
It's really great because we normally find that farms are split, or 3 ways normally actually. You'll have the farms that have got like a taxi or a shuttle or some kind of milk cart device, and so for them using an open feeder, a single feeder or a group feeder is really easy and fast to use. Or you'll have the smaller farms that will go and fill feeders by bucket, and then you have the farms that are set up with like kitchens and bottle filling devices and all the rest of it. And so with the bottle feeding market, as you said, the teat placement has to be absolutely correct. So the calf has the right delivery of milk. And so we've devised a way that when you put the bottle into the chute, it just aligns as the weight of the bottle comes in, it aligns it so the teat is always in the perfect position. And then we've color coded the caps as well, so that like this little pink calf here, she will stay with that teat until she's weaned, because then she'll have the correct milk delivery the whole way through, and the yellow calf will stay with her yellow cap the whole way through.
And for larger farms, you kind of have also batches. So maybe calves that are born in the same week have all one color and one batch of teat, so you don't have to sort through 6,000 bottles, 6,000 different colors.
Exactly. That's right. So all the calves that are born in week 1 might be allocated red, and then the next week would be blue, and then just it means that any person can walk straight onto that calf, into that calf facility, and just match the colours.
Yeah,
management has got to be easy on farms.
Absolutely. And I'm just a little cautious of our time here.
Sorry, I do go on.
There's a lot of things to talk about, but this is like one way with the color coding there, how to track it and how to handle it with the bottles. But you and your company, you have like all the different like setups, how to do it for different, if you use feeders or if you use the big feeders, the mobile feeders and all of that. So if anybody has any question how to implement that on their farm, they should just contact you. You can also contact us from Agri-Comfort, and we just help them with that. The product.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, then this, I ask you to give me a picture of this because, that's just something for me as a European. It's just kind of rare.
Yeah. So this is in Brazil. This is what they call the Argentinian system. And so basically on the left there, you can just sort of see in the top corner there, you'll see a sort of a lean-to type shed. Well, it's not a lean-to actually, it's a freestanding, but it's a shelter there. So the calf has so she has shelter there, and then the feeder she's on a rope, so she can go to about 10 meters. So because it's very hot there, so they'll go out to feed. Normally the water and the grain is out there as well, and then they can go backwards and forwards between their feed and then being in the shade.
Yeah, but they're not like, I like this actually because they're not like stuck in one place, which then might get wet and mucky.
Yes.
But they can like have all their slobber and milk and water and everything here.
Yeah.
And when they get up, they usually also poop, and then they can go back and have like their clean shelter.
That's it. Yeah.
I like it. Okay. Well, so we already have a couple of questions in. This is the moment for anybody that still has any questions to type it in the Q&A section. Well, let's look at what we already got. So there you have a question. That's like, we have customers who, when starting on MilkBar, experience that their calves take over 40 minutes to drink 4 liters. These are calves who have not been introduced to buckets. What should the farmer do?
Okay. Hi, Louise. I guess the question to that is, was the calf started first of all on a faster teat, or were they started directly on the on a MilkBar teat?
Yeah.
Because what will often happen is the calf will start on a faster teat with a valve in it, and it changes the way they drink, and instead of suckling and nursing the teat, they'll pump it. Yeah. And they actually need time to relearn how to suckle properly. So normally the first 2 or 3 feeds, if you're taking a calf from a fast feeding teat and then putting it onto the MilkBar teat, it will normally take 2 or 3 feeds for the calf to get her groove back and learn to suckle again properly. Yeah. Otherwise, that would be the most common thing. Occasionally, it could be something to do with the slitting of the teat. We do hand slit all of our teats, but very, very occasionally there might be something with that. So the best thing is to come to us directly through the website, and we can get to the bottom of it.
And just maybe one other idea that So here in Germany, particularly, we have like a lot of selenium deficiency in young calves that makes them very weak to drink, which you might not see when they're drinking on a system where it's very, very easy for them to drink.
Yeah.
Like a fast flowing teat, where they really just have to like kind of push it a little bit and it's basically running in their mouth. And but a MilkBar system might show this. And because they really need to use their muscles and they just don't have the muscle strength to do it because of the selenium deficiency. And but that's something that you could discuss with your local vet.
Mm-hmm.
Just have some blood tests run to determine your selenium levels in your farm, in your herd, and see if you maybe need to treat your calves or long-term even fertilize your fields with some selenium. So that's always.
I always forget about selenium.
So it's just something to look into. It's actually quite an easy fix. If it's that, it's not. It's a disease then, but it's really just all of this like selenium based on this deficiency that you can fix quite easy.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question. It's like from Suzanne. Does feeding grain to the calf right away after finishing their milk reduce cross-suckling?
Hi, Suzanne. No, it doesn't. The thing with the cross-suckling is it's directly linked to the actual milk part of their feed. So feeding them grain doesn't satisfy the suckling urge or the instinct. The other thing is with grain is that although they will start eating grain, and they should start eating grain from the first week because it helps to stimulate the rumen growth, it's only really until they're 5 or 6 weeks old that the rumen is developed sufficiently for them to take really any nutrient from it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got a young calf, although they need the grain for the stimulation to develop the rumen, it's not going to satisfy the suckling urge, which is what makes them cross-suckle.
Absolutely. And there's even like one other factor in that, that they have specialized enzymes in their abomasum. I mean, the grain will first go into the rumen, but eventually will end in the abomasum, and the whole argument is that they basically are a monogaster at the beginning and that they will digest it. That's only partly true because research actually showed that they have special enzymes that are made to break down milk protein in the beginning and milk fat, but not grain protein and fat, because those are different structures, molecule structures. And they only started to transition when they're about 2 or 3 weeks old, and they're only fully there when they're 4 to 5 weeks old. So yes, they should eat it, but it's not really sufficient for them to be, to be fed with that. Okay. There's a question about what is the problem with the first lactation heifers from cross-suckling?
Yes. So cross-suckling and first lactation mastitis go hand in hand, basically. Mm-hmm. It's been documented for many, many years. What happens is when the calf cross-sucks on her pen mate or her buddy, when they suckle on the udder or the developing teat, the end of the teat has got like a little waxy seal called a keratin plug, and that seal is what protects the teat canal from any bugs, pathogens, things that are around. Mm-hmm. So when they are young and they're being cross-suckled on, they actually remove that keratin plug, and that leaves that teat canal open to any pathogens or bacteria that are around. The other thing is that when they cross-suck, they bunt up against each other, and that also damages the developing udder tissue. Mm-hmm. So quite often you'll see calves that have had quite a lot of cross-suckling when they're pre-weaned. They will come into the herd and they might have one blind quarter, and that's often caused by that damage in that first sort of 3 months of life.
Yeah, and there's also like studies that they're
quite a lot of information on that.
Yeah, absolutely, that they're like introducing already like resistant germs into the udder that are just like staying there especially if you're feeding waste milk to your calves at some point. That might have some mastitis germs already in it. It's just full circle, and you already contaminate your young heifers with it. You should neither do. You should not feed anyone else milk, or you should, and you also should not have tolerate your calves cross suckling like that. Okay. Yeah, so it's like a very similar question. Any tips on discouraging cross-suckling when switching over to a MilkBar teat for calves who are not started on a MilkBar teat?
Hi, Laurie. Thanks for the question. So if you are switching over, so for example, we were just on a large farm in the States a couple of months ago, or beginning of the year now actually, and they were switching their calves from a single system to the buddy system, and they were using buckets, which is quite common in the States, and they had terrible problems with their cross-suckling. So they switched over to the control to the MilkBar teat, and within a couple of days their cross-suckling had pretty much disappeared. So depending on the breed of the calf, as Nele said before, the Fleck V, for example, quite famous for their cross-suckling. But typically, if you can control the flow and have the calves drinking at +3 minutes per litre, they will not cross-suckle. But you will get the odd rogue calf that once they have started, once have learnt to cross-suckle, they often will be a suckler the whole way through, especially with bulls as well. So you will sometimes get a rogue that will carry on because it becomes a habit, but typically within a few days you should see your calves stopping that behaviour.
Yeah. And I mean, you could also maybe try and have a couple of those colostrum teats for the beginning to kind of like ease over with the transition.
Yeah.
You could try that too, but that's more work again. Great question. Okay, Tasha is asking, what kind of nipple is for bottle? Do we need for a bottle? We use multiple different ones. So yeah, she's using the Agri-Plastic snap-on bottles right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So Tasha, I'm assuming you're in the States by your use of gallons. So I'm going to assume you're using a snap-on type bottle. Actually, our distributor in the States does do the MilkBar teat in a snap-on. So you could go to that, you could go to them and they will be able to supply you. Or if you change your snap-on bottle to a screw top, then you can use the Vitality system, which means that you just screw the cap onto the bottle.
Yeah, and then that's the one with the adapter that we're talking about, where it's like always in the right position.
That's it.
Yeah. And then we have 2 questions about automatic calf feeders. And I don't know, do you want to give a little outlook?
Yeah. So yes, we have a lot of demand for teats for the automatic systems. So actually some systems, some of the automatic feeders, you can adapt the teat as it is to fit. But we have actually been in development and just getting the whole automatic teat really perfect. So please keep an eye on our website, and we will have some really nice news for you, those of you using automatic feeders.
Maybe we are meeting again and talking about that.
Yeah.
Okay, and last question from Tasha again. How easy are they to clean?
Tasha, you don't need to remove, you're using bottles actually, so you will need to remove them, but because the teat has no valve, there's no screw threading parts, basically it's just the open teat canal. So a couple of times a week use an alkali detergent, and the alkali will just strip the milk fat and the milk protein out of the rubber. It's the same sort of detergent you would use to clean your milking liners, and that will really prolong the life of the teat, but also get rid of the fat and the protein. And then other than that, just rinse them every day. If it's summertime, I would rinse them after each feed. In the winter, you can probably get away with a daily rinse. But you don't need to, if you're using the feeders, you don't need to remove the teat for cleaning. It just stays in there.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, so that's basically the end of our webinar now. I want to give a little look out. So just before Christmas, on Tuesday, this time of the 22nd of December, we moved it from Wednesday to Tuesday because we thought on the 23rd, everybody's already going home to their families, as they should. So we're doing it on a Tuesday this time, but the same time slot. And I will talk with to Reese from Dairy Power, and we're talking about aerating slurry and how that affects your slurry in your tanks. A very different topic, a cow topic again, and very Christmassy topic. I'm very excited about it. Dairy Power just joined us at Agri-Comfort, and we're all very excited about it. And I think there's actually very interesting science behind it, so I get a lot of excitement out of that, but I think it's very interesting for farmers all over the world, because everyone who has animals has also slurry, so.
That's a thing.
Okay. Oh, Anna, thank you very, very much for joining me today, for taking the time to talk to us. And
absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. So anybody, thanks for listening. This is a recorded webinar, so I'm gonna have to download and edit it a little bit, but then we're gonna put it up on YouTube and you're gonna get the link. Everybody who joined us today, thanks for taking the time to listen, and yeah, see you on the 22nd.
Great. Thank you, Nele.
Bye-bye, Anna.
Bye.